pa le malo ai mai se o le paia o le ngaluenga paia le atua o te whaatulou, tulou na lava. Lunu atuia whaatino tausala o tau paia Samoa a wale i via e le ngā whatia e le awona. O le nei aso ua tātou taunu manuia mai i le silau ma le ono o aso. Talu o na awhaina si o tātou atunu i le pisi o le whamae o le Kvzktv ma le iba. Silau ma le ono aso, sa tātou sa valia i le loi mata malingi ma le whanua noa ia o leo tātou taunu mai ua maua foisi na malolonga ona ua whaapena ona mau atu a unga o le whamae. Bi ai pea le swafa manu malo Yesu Kiriso ma o tātou te mai le langi ona o lana puipuinga ma lona leo leonga o si o tātou atunu. Good morning, America, or good afternoon, American Samoa, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to appear before you with the Governor's Task Force to provide an update of the workings of our task force and your government during this COVID-19 surge in American Samoa. Today marks the 106th day since we first recorded the spread of coronavirus in our community. It has been a difficult days, 106 days. We have witnessed the loss of dear lives and many who have suffered as a result of COVID. But by the grace of God, we have weathered through the difficult times, and we are now at a point where we can safely declare that our surge has come to a lull, and we are in a better place than we were in the early part of this year. All the grace, all the glory, and thanks goes to God for his protection and kindness on the people of American Samoa. Likewise, on behalf of Governor Lemanu, I want to thank our community, our church leaders, our village and county leaders, and all of our government leaders and people of American Samoa for your support, your prayers, and your cooperation. Because without your assistance and your help, it would have been a very difficult operation for the governor and our government to try to walk us through the COVID surge we just experienced. The biggest whamalo and whaftai to our federal partners who were instrumental in helping us with the vaccination, the testing, and all of the operational assistance and expertise that they gave us, which allowed our team here in American Samoa, both at DOH and at the LBJ, to weather the storm and serve our people. So we give them thanks for their assistance. We are now, federal FEMA has now returned to the mainland, and we have changing our operations now to our local folks to handle the operation. So thank you to all of you for your assistance, to our medical personnel, to our operational personnel, DPS, and all of those who are on the front line here in American Samoa, who have sacrificed yourselves, safety to make sure that the requirements of our operation are fully met. I am grateful and I'm honored to be working with all of you now that we have reached this point. It gives me great pleasure to honor and thank you for your service to people of American Samoa. Now, as we move forward, we pivot again from where we began. In 2020, we had a closed border where none of us were able to travel freely, and we were able to use this time to prepare. but there was also a lot of difficulty with our families not being able to visit them. We changed from the closed border to repatriation, and we started to bring our folks back home. We changed from repatriation to limited commercial flights, and that's the phase that we've been operating till lately. And now that we've had an experience with COVID, and we are slowly getting out from that experience, we are moving yet again to another phase of our operation, and that is to allow more commercial flights and to reopen things to pre-pandemic times. And so we all have to adjust. I know some in our community want things to immediately go back to what it was before 2020, but we ask you to bear with us and walk this together with us. Eventually, we will restore as many of those freedoms as we had before. Our task moving forward and our way to protect us from COVID is masking, vaccination. If you feel ill or get symptoms, get tested and get treated. Those are the 4 pillars on which we protect ourselves and make sure that we continue to live free and to enjoy the freedoms while being protected from further surges and other viruses that could be coming to our community. And with that, I want to turn over to our presenters today. Today we have DOH will be presenting an update, a 7-day update of what has happened during our surge, followed by a presentation from LBJ, and we will close up with a presentation from the DOE regarding graduation and other plans moving forward for the school year and beyond. After those 3 presentations, we will have an opportunity for our media partners to ask questions, and we will conclude thereafter with short statements. And now I turn the floor over to Dr. Laval at DOH for your presentation.
Pak Saigar, Pak Saigar Pak Saigar malu la tunu mai la tunu Pak Saigar mai le auri le for Pak Saigar me tupu le matanga wenga so from Mangaloina. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a weekly situation report from the American Samoa Department of Health, May 30 to June 5th, 2022. Next slide. Okay, this is a quick snapshot of our response activities for the week of May 30 to June 5th, 2022. Both DOH Test to Treat sites, the clinics, the lab, and also LPJ EMS conducted 3,200 COVID-19 tests. From that number, it was with a total of 78 confirmed positive cases. This is also aligned with the decreasing number of our daily positive cases, and DOH and LPJ continue to offer therapeutic treatments for those who are tested positive and needed treatment. From that number of 3,200 for the past 7 days, 78 were confirmed positive, 12 were treated for at DOH, and 8 at LBJ. There was one admission at LBJ, and then there's no fatality or deaths from the past 7 days. I will let LBJ elaborate more on those admissions and other issues. Next slide. This is looking at our new and cumulative numbers for the week of May 30 to June 5th, 2022. For the past 7 days, there were 78 positive, and that now our cumulative number stands at 6,208 positive cases since the beginning of this community transmission back in February 20th. For those released from the past 7 days is 65. So the total number of the cumulative numbers of those released from their isolation of 10 to 14 days, it stands at 6,090. And there are about 118 active cases now out in the community. For those who are tested positive, 12 were tested for the past 7 days. So the cumulative numbers of those who were treated with therapeutic stands at 2,568. Next slide. That's looking at our map. Our total number of our positive cases on the past 7 days is 6,208. The table on the left listed the number of villages and the number of positive cases that are there in those villages. The map on the right shows that the whole island of Tutuila and Manua, Aunuu, has been canvassed with our COVID-19 positive cases. The darker the color, the more positive cases are there, like in the village of Tafuna and Nu'uli. Next slide. So this is looking at our epi curve for that's the 7 days case rate. And by looking at our epi curve and the 7 days case rate, it appears that we already reached and passed our peak of our outbreak, and then we are still continuing to go on a downward trend. It appears that now it has plateaued. For any outbreak, it will reach its peak, its surge, then start to decrease to a plateau. It may continue to plateau for months or longer periods, and then maybe get resolved. And when at this period, while we plateauing, maybe there's a good time to ease more restrictions, as the task force are doing right now. If there's an outbreak, there will appear a sudden increase or spike number of cases, and DOH and LBJ are ready to come back if there is a sudden spike or increased number of positive cases. Next slide. This is our latest from Manua search and operations. Next slide. From May 30 to June 5, 2022, there was about 223 COVID-19 tests conducted in Manua, 196 from Ta'u and 27 from Ofu, and only 2 were tested positive from the past 7 days. Next slide. This is looking at Manua COVID-19 case report. For the past 7 days, they reported only 2 positive. So the cumulative number since the beginning of the search in Manua, it stands at 70. 10 were released from the past 7 days from isolation, and the cumulative numbers of those released from isolation stands at 67. As of today, there's only 3 active cases out there in the community. There were 10 cases treated since the beginning of the search and the outbreak in Manua. There's no hospitalization and no fatality related to COVID-19. Next slide. That's looking at the number of cases in Manua by villages. We have a total of 70 new cases. In total cases, there's 3 active cases right now, and there's 2 new cases reported from the 7 days, and those 2 new cases are from Ta'u. And also the 3 active cases are also at Ta'u. Next slide. That's looking at our therapeutics available at Manua. So we have about 80 doses of those available in Manua to treat those who are tested positive and needed treatment for COVID-19. Next slide. This is looking at our vaccination. Next slide. So our total coverage for our population coverage for American Samoa as of June 5th, there's about 84.8% are those who are fully vaccinated, and about 89% of those with at least 1 dose of COVID-19 vaccination. Next slide. That's looking at the number of COVID-19 vaccination doses available at DOH at our immunization program. So we have about 12,832 doses, and that will cover our vaccination sites for 1 month. Next slide. Next slide. This is looking at our flights and quarantine. So these are the recommendations from DOH for Talofa Pass. There will be no more pre-travel COVID-19 testing prior to departure to American Samoa from Honolulu and Samoa, and hopefully this will be effective as the week of June 13. The travelers will only be tested upon arrival at the airport. Passengers traveling from outside of the U.S. and Samoa, they have to be in the U.S. or appear for 72 hours, complete a 72 hours test prior to departure to American Samoa. Those results must be uploaded on Talofa Pass. We also support the increased number of passengers for the flights from Apia from Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and also added an extra flights. We also like to announce that effective tomorrow, all passengers travel to Manua and from Manua, there will be no more COVID testing for these passengers. Next slide. That's it. That's the situation report for the week of May 30 to June 5th, 2022 from the Department of Health. Over. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laval, for your presentation. And now we turn the floor over to Dr. Leato and an update from our hospital LBJ.
Tele la wafionga lo tele kuvala o tu so la no tu ina mai tanga venga al falma e fa malulu atu e o tatu tātou atunuu o le a whawau pēr le whorasanga i le wha Samoa. Ia ai sila mai o le whorasanga o le wha pēnao na tustusia i le wha Peritania. For our non-speaking audiences this afternoon, my slides will still be in English, but I will go ahead and explain them and present them in the Samoan language. First slide, please. Ia o le whosangale na e watu ai se whaelo ina ia sila fiero tātou atunu ngā renga wha asolo i le lua se fulwhai tula wa tuanai. O wai tātou iai nei leo wha inga o mosu enga sa mwhaiona wha o ngā ina mai lamtanga le wha moe le lua se fulima afe mo le lua. E mai le lua se fulwhai tula, tolu se fuluriva, tolu se lau iwa se fulima o e na sueina. E na o le wha ia ngase sa whapena o na maua i le Kvzktv. Mai le wha o ngase sa whapena o na maua i le Kvzktv. E tasi le ngase sa whapena o na tongfitia. E ala le whaatulanga ina o waila awe au na tongfitia i ngase a sa wha o ngā ina i le waila au na o Kvzktv maha. Pia e wha lau ilo atu, ma mole mau atu i le luskul pai tula. Ele iai se mai na tau fia. Ai pe jaiane pe ona tau sila le folasanga mai le tanga luenga le soifua maloloina pe ona sauno atu le sunga le fo mai ala vao sa iai le mai sa tau fia la tamai o le nanga se ngase sa fa te aina i le asungufua. O le ala lea tau tole o sila mai iai o lo papena na batu le ripoti al matanga luenga le fatmai. Ua iai nei le whainu mera atoa o ngase uma sa tau fia mai le amatanga o le wha moe le masina o Februari o lo tulai mai le selau ma le fitu le whainga o tātou ngase. Mawalunga pēr le vi inga o le atua o lo wha atu mawina pēr le tātou whainu mera o e na mariliu i le Kvzktv fuluiva i le numera e tolu fulmatasi. Ma o lo fa pena poi ona iai pea vanoa i tutonu le tātou whalmaliu mo ia wha moenga. O la sanga luna lua, whamomole. Next slide. Whaftai. Ia o ngā ruenga wha solo ia, tau na whailo atu le mamanu le tātou atu nuu, o ngā ruenga o lo whaia pea. E a fo le tau ma whai ina ia whātu mawina pea. Ia le matai tū o le ngā ruenga nei le whare mai, le whare leia lea o a tātou ngā ruenga e au tātou ngase tau mai i le Kvzktv ia mai se fo i wha mai wha pena. O loo iai nei le ngā ruenga o ngā ngā ruenga o le whare leia ma le wha tele o otu tau fia i tutonu le tātou whare mai. Le a pai e toe tūlai mai se tele o tātou ngase a ngai mai i le tātou whanmai. Ma ua aia fo i tūla pono e pe on pautua ina aile ngā ruenga le tanga ruenga whanmai. O na sa māngusi tapu o na o le whamoe ina i austa ia pea poloa inga le tātou kovana ma le task force. Ia ua iai na i swinga fo i kutono le whanmai i a tātou tausi mai. E meisi o tūla pono sa pa a taoto. Ua iai nei le swinga o tātou fono. Ia o isi ia o mea ua mawhai o na whai o na oto atu le nei tūnai lau whapunga me Samoa ai whaatari atu mo se pesiri fo le sunga i le tena kowana man mamalu o tātou atunu o lo waba mo lo whakualo whaapatai.
Aftai lau sunga le fomai le yato o na o le fosanga matamu fie a wafo le whafunga anga malama o siwa tātou atunu. Terminei o le atu loa le abanoa i le sunga i le sui whaatonu o le ofisa wa onga ia le tina ia Roxanne Salabea ia mo la folasanga i le nei tūlao le uli.
Good afternoon, Honorable Gar, Task Force, TCO, government leaders, as well as our viewers and guests. On behalf of Director Talawenga, Dr. Rasaeli, I would like to take this opportunity to provide updates in terms of our high school graduation plans. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have an updated plan for our high school graduations. Initially, they're scheduled to be held at the Veterans Stadium. But in considering the declaration and easing up of some of these restrictions, the DOE have restructured a plan where all high schools will now be administered at their respective high schools. As you can see, the schedule remains the same, beginning with Manua High School this Friday. So Tuesday to a high school Friday. Thank you. Next slide. Next, please.
Deputy
Sorry about that. There was a disconnection.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. Thank you for being patient. So in addition to the high school graduations, we also want to share the summer programs that the Department of Education will be implementing during the summer. So as you can see, there's a various number of programs that will be implemented this summer. Not only to address the lost learning during the COVID shutdown, but also just providing students with the opportunity for and with
fa lo sunga le sifa tonu ia o le ua o loka mai le fasalanga a chuchua tpele no e fa mai for sanga ia se ito chu mai le chacho slide le mulmuli o le forsanga le chacho ofisa wa onga o le pokalama ia o lo fufuaina mo le baitemi o le sama a wale whawawina pēo o onga tato whanau e ele slide mulmuli se tuifo o le slide le nā o tato whauunga o a onga leo o tawhal finangalo le fionga le pusili o le a to e tuwatu a tato whauunga a whanau I whai I o lato a o onga ia o le a onga maulunga Samoana o le a whaia lava I Utulei, Uli, Leone, o le whapena lava ona toe tuatu e whatau nuu I laumua o onga. Ia o le a tausia I a taunu manuia ia fuafuanga uma e ele le slide mulmuli a le ofisa wa onga se tuifa fa mulmole. There's the last slide. Ia o le slide mulmuli le whailo atua I le malu le tunuu o le fuafuanga ia mo le tausanga onga o le manai nei o le aso luasu luiva o lo whatalsanga ina ele toe o mai o whaia onga ia o lo fufua le whatonu ma le puleanga e toe amatalia tātoa onga I le aso ono September. Aso ono September ia o le fufuanga na le fionga le si whatonu ma le whatonu ia wā o onga tātou whanau. O le temi nei o le a tuatuloa le avanoa I le malu o le tātou media ia mo ofisili mo ni whaamalamalanga o mataupu o whapenao na polisia atu I le neitu la o le aso. Mua mai le tina ia Fili o lo avanoa nei.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Governor. Good afternoon, everyone. From the Health Department's slide, that they're going to be doing away with pre-travel COVID testing prior to arrival in Pago Pago. Is there an explanation as to why this is going to be done? Also, for travelers from Hawaii arriving here on island, if you're tested negative, are you still going to be isolated quarantined at home? But if you're tested positive, are you still going to be in isolation? Just some clarifications, please.
Dr. Laval, please
Thank you,
address
Philly,
this
for the
question.
question. Yeah, thank you, Philly, for the question. For the first question, we decided to change the testing. As you all know, that COVID-19 also here, the variants that are over there are the same variants over here. And we decided to let go of that 72-hour test. And also, most of the sites for the tests are difficult to find in the state. So people traveling from Hawaii are having problems to locate these testing sites and to get tested before they travel. And we're only planning to test them on arrival. And if they're tested negative, they go home. There's no restrictions of movement. There's no quarantine. They need to check in on Talofa Pass 5 days, and then that's it. If they have symptoms, they need to come in and get tested. If they need treatment, they need to be treated. If they test positive on arrival, they're transferred to a supervised DOH isolation. They will be isolated for 5 days. After 5 days, they go home, complete 10 days at home, and also to check on Talofa Pass for that. But I want to make sure that everybody knows there's no more quarantine. They go home, there's no restriction of moments, but they need to check in the Talofa Pass 5 days, and they still need to continue to wear their masks, social distancing, and all those protective measures that we already push out to our community. I hope that answers your question, Phoebe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laval. One more question for DOH. Someone keeps asking, and I guess I'll pass along this question. Since the reopening of schools on May the 2nd with in-person classroom instructions, staggered days, level 5 to 12, has DOE reported any students, teachers, or school official tested positive? Or any of them being tested positive, not only from private school, but public schools? Or do you have data?
My apologies, Gar. I didn't catch the question. My connection is unstable.
Have any teachers tested positive since school started in May?
Or even students?
Yes, so there were a couple of students and teachers who tested positive, but it was confirmed that when we did the tracing, it wasn't from the school sites.
Okay.
We partnered up with DOH in helping us with the tracing of these cases. So it was confirmed by DOH that it wasn't from the school sites.
Thank you, Deputy Director. That's it. You've answered the other question on graduations and summer school programs. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Imanvia Lavaliaso.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Philly. Now I'd like to turn the floor over to Monica Miller. Miss Monica.
Malo level so for la wafionga le ten ko vana le tai fono le komiti fa foi ia fa pe foi la to o awai mai le nei fa tal noanga malo level nga lue o lewa ba ayatu ua fa solo lava ina toi fo ita to ile me masanyai malo lava yai o to uma o lo fisili la ona leo foninga mai ua le toi mana o mia ia tangata ona o ilunga o le ona whaiala tau suenga i o le COVID ai le tau no o mai nei. E eila se mana onga e tū maua i pēa i le stala i lunga o le Talofa Pass. A whaifo i olo o iai pēa, pē mwhaiuna wha malama mai ia mafuanga e te tau wai ona tātou whaongangina pēa le Talofa Pass, wha mole.
Tai Monica, e te lea lava le mana onga e tawai ona tātou whaongai na pēa le Talofa Pass. O leo o te tala atu e le tātou medical community, le testing before arrival. Ai, e fwoi le teimi e tō tupu mai sesi wha mai. Ia whina ngalo le tātou medical community e tō wha malo sia tu. Ia ona wha pēnā fwoi leo tātou tō o iai. Ia walisi mea o lo wha malo sia pēa le tātou vaccination. Tau ona vaccinate uma lava tātou e 5 tausanga i aru numa ia ai le malanga mai Amerika Samoa e le usuia lava le whautuanga le tātou medical community tātou fōmai. E winga le tūlanga lea o loo track fo i le tātou tālofa pass, tūlanga o ngase ngase o tangata o loo whaimalanga mai. Ia ma tūlanga o apenga maa losi o lo fia o mai, ia o tino maliu, fia o mai, whapena fo i tūlanga o taifau, ma isi ia manu o lo fia au mai e tangata malanga ia Rick Samu. Ia umalawa ia o lo mana o mia ele tracking al tātou tālofa pass system. Ia o se talipupu atu lea ele fesili, e tele fo isi winga o la lava tuna ni te wo tele tātou asu.
Yeah, malo saunoa. Ole fesili mo le sunga le fo mai ia Abraham le yato na e saunoa ia nei swinga ia i le frio inga o ngase o atu i le mauta ngase i whanga alu pa pe fo i tau si mai. Em whai ona e whaamalu la mai mo le tila fia le tunu ua tonu lava swinga ia. Wai pe o le silea mata upe fesili e pe le tunu ufa mole lava lau sunga i fo mai.
Em salongo molo ba noa car se I tau.
Sonoa ia lau sunga fo mai, sonoa.
Whaftai lava. Whaftai marika mo le whafsino nei au uli. Mai monia wha maon. O le mea whanau lo mātu iai le tele o whasiringia ono le tula whono tuai. Sa whapena ona iai le 5 aso o le tau simai. Tula whono le tau simai leo tanu ai. Sa whaingata ona o le takuna I 5 aso. O le ke piwa I tutonu e le mawhai o na sawifafu. Ala wa ia nei ina ua saule tula whonofou le poloa inga o tātou povansili la solusi mo pitu o me. O umona whaatano ina le komiti whaafoia ia tula whono nei tutonu o le whanmai. Ma ua ia nei le swinga fou wa whai ona tu le tolu aso tapulaa. Ai ai fo ngase au o na tala noa pe le tai fo mai. Ma le tene tau si mai o le sifi o la ue whai unga pe a pea e te tau o na lalo mai le tolu aso. Ia tau na o wha manini o tuwa penal tula pono le Kvzktv. Ai ona o le whalangolango pe o le tanga ruenga whalmai. Ia le o le waitau ne o lo matai tu e pe na ere tula pono leo a tolu vai aso. Lo matou tau mwhai e mai tau pea ia winga whaali o le vai rusi lo na solo. Ai ele tau nunga a tu maua I pe na mo mau tatala vau le plateau ia ona whapena lo lea ona tu e sui deisi whainga I le masina o sau ia au le tari pai tau atu lea ka maunama le malu le tātou atu nupo o tari siri Monica
Ia whawhai la mai lo sunga. Te tasi al siri wha mole o le ua maua mai li poti Hawaii whapea ua iei le whamai le o le monkeypox. E se fufuanga fu ele po le ase fufuanga e tau mata I tu ai fo ia le whamai o na leo whalongo atu e pe o le la tā ofi ia tātou suenga ia mai Hawaii ia le tau no mai ia tangata malanga wha mole la.
Tu atu siri lea I le fo mai lavao.
Thank you, Monica. We'll give you an update on our next briefing on the monkeypox condition. Over.
Ia whawhai lava man weir phone.
Tai Monica, mo sili ia o le amanoa nei ia inisi o tātou media o lo tātou whatasi nei aso lau sunga tosi.
Le whawhai mo le awanoa le na wa tali mai le whesiri no whesiri atu ai. Whawhai lava mo le awanoa.
Ia, o le naua tātou taunu mai le si ui o le tātou whatalasana noanga fo I le nei a uli. Ia maa o le whaasira silanga I le malu le atunu e mesi fo I o le tātou au whai media. O le tātou wheloa inga muli le nei ta I vai aso. Weekly press conference. Ia pe on silafia o leua tātou o mai fo I se tūlanga e mawhai ai on toi whai isi ngā luenga o whai sina lewa ona leo toi whai ia ai o leua manuia le tau mwhainga a whai fo e se swinga ia o lea whapena ona longo atu le mamaru o le media ma le tātou nuu ia mo se tātou wheloa inga e whamamlama tuainga luenga le tātou task force. This will be the last weekly press conference of the task force. We believe with the advice of the medical community, we've reached a good point to shift some of the resources to cover other areas of our government needs. We will continue to have our weekly meetings. Task force meetings will be held on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. And we will prepare media releases, which will include updates from DOH, LBJ, and other areas of government, updating our community and the media of happenings with respect to our response to COVID-19. But it has been a pleasure working with our media team. I want to thank all of you for your part in helping dispense the accurate information. Sometimes you were dispensing inaccurate information, but for the most part, we all work together to make sure that our community receives the information. The Attorney General and his outreach team will continue their weekly Talanoa sessions on KVCK to go into more detail on the specific requirements of the governor's proclamation and provide updates in between our meetings and our press releases. But if there is a need, we will host another press conference and provide information to our media. And of course, our media is welcome to send your questions and phone calls to the EOC, to TCO Sa'amana, as well as DOH, Director Mutsa and Dr. Lobau, if further information is needed to answer questions from our community. Aolinei tula, ile ia man mamalu o tātou atunu, mole atu le angang whawhitai, man whamaru. Whawhitai no le nei foi mawhitanga o tātou maua, ia e tali tonu, ua whamania ina foi o tō whina I se tautua le a wao, a le tātou whainga malo. Le a foi se tautua o le tautu mani, o se whamtalanga o le whonga mali e lau whafonga anga Samoa, ia malu a whali. Oto ale tautai ia e foi le teimi mo wai sasi. Ia manute le ina fufuanga o tutore le nei aso, I le lofa ma le anga le leo le atua, lofa le atua le afionga le povan sili, ia ma le malu le tātou whainga malo I ona taitai. Ia tātou maua pele file mu, ma le whaatasi mai o le alofa o le atua, soifua mai I manuia.